And we're back again here on Red Hot Chile. Glad you joined us, folks. It's a beautiful sunset. I'm looking over that way. Really can't get a good camera angle as I'm watching that sun fade right behind that marine layer out there. It's the marine layer comes in, of course, at night. I wrote a blog entry about that and covers Viña del Mar most mornings. Not every morning. Yesterday was completely clear, but it does happen quite often. The beach is. I'll tell you, living down by the beach is really wonderful. I like the lakes and the mountains the best. I have to admit, Southern Chile is the best. But as far as big city and place you can work and being close to town, Santiago, and close to the international airport, fairly close at any rate, it's hard to beat the Viña del Mar area. Well, this was a big week. Last week was a big week, and really has continued to be a big week in Chile because of the earthquake. And I mentioned it last week. And it's funny. It was really humorous when Joe got here. He's here producing the show and helping me a lot today, and that's why we're doing this outside and doing the YouTube video. But we got in late from Santiago back over to Viña, and I think it was about 11:20. Didn't we get about 11:20 at night, something like that?
Late.
Yeah, it was pretty late at night. For Chileans coming back on Friday night, that's not really considered late here, but I guess by American standards, just late in the evening. And my wife, asked me, where are you from, Joe? And he's saying, well, I'm from Arizona. Yeah, well, she doesn't speak English. At least she doesn't want to try. She doesn't understand it very much. She said, ask him, does he really understand what it's like to live around earthquakes? And it's the minute it came out of her mouth, a 5.8 earthquake hit Viña del Mar. And it shook pretty well, wouldn't you say, Joe? Here, let me put the microphone all the way to you. Tell me what you think about the earthquake here.
Oh, it was a pretty good ride. It was only my second one. Yeah, it was interesting. Only lasted what, 10 seconds, yeah. So it wasn't too bad.
But it was a good jolt, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it really was a good welcome to Chile jolt. It was so funny right when she said it, and I said, well, yeah, now. It moved real quick. The sharp move. We stood there waiting to see if it got worse. When the earthquake starts, you always wait and say, okay, is it going to be a really strong earthquake? Do I need to try to get outside so a building doesn't collapse on me or something like that? That's what you're trained when you're in California too, Southern California, or anywhere in California, where I grew up. It wasn't. It ended quickly, and then we were amused by the fact that we were just happened to be asking about that, and an earthquake hit. 5.8 is pretty strong. I thought it might have been a 6. It was so strong, but it turned out the epicenter was only about 5 miles north of Viña del Mar. A little bit more, maybe more or less, about 5 miles from here. And so that's why it was so strong. It felt so strong, very close to the epicenter. And Chile is an earthquake country. I mean, it has a lot of quakes here. People say, well, isn't that scary? Or, a big quake can hit and cause a lot of problems. The tidal wave or the tsunami is even worse if you're along the coast here like this, because this beautiful ocean behind us can turn into a raving monster in that case. But if you look at buildings around here, they go through these 5, 6 level, Richter scale level quakes frequently. I mean, in the last 2 months, there's been on average an earthquake over 5 every week here, and it jolts in the middle of the night or in the day. And if you look at the buildings, they're not cracked. Nothing falls down. There's no broken glass. Nothing's falling off the shelves, because things are engineered for earthquakes here in Chile. More than any other country I've ever seen in the world, they are prepared for earthquakes, because they've had, before World War II, absolute disasters that were just tragedies. In Chillán, 25,000 people died who were living in adobe structures when an 8.5 hit. Well, this recent earthquake up in Iquique was an 8.2, or some say an 8.3. It was a big quake. That is a significantly large quake. It was hundreds of times more powerful than the 5.8 that hit us just the other night here, and it lasted for a fair number of seconds. I don't actually get the actual number. I think it was 40 seconds, but I'm not entirely clear on the duration. That's important. The duration is very important. But look, 6 people lost their lives, and as I mentioned on the radio show, there were a couple of them were heart attacks. You really don't know for sure if those people were dying on account of the quake or not. And one person fell from heights, and the other 3 just died in miscellaneous ways during the quake. And it's tragic, as I mentioned before. And there was some damage done. But if you consider that kind of quake anywhere else would have been far worse than this one actually was in Iquique. you have to be surprised and have to really hand it to Chilean ingenuity and architecture that it holds up so well. They're so well prepared for how to manage earthquake damage and problems. The final damage report's coming out soon, or right about the time the radio show actually published or broadcast on the air. There should be more news, but last word, there were at least 400 homes in Arica that were badly damaged, and Iquique is certainly around the same figure. Up in Huara, it's Huara, which is a town on the road between Iquique and Arica, much closer to Iquique, which goes to Colchane, the border town with Bolivia. The road forks off there if you choose to, and you go up to Bolivia. A little Indian village up there with no more than, I don't know, a few hundred people in it. Well, that place was really struck hard. There are 206 homes in that sector of Huara, and 206 homes that were damaged in that section of Huara, the crossroads. 40 of them are completely uninhabitable in the quake, so that's tragic. Those homes would have not been built to very high standards like stuff more recently. And people ask me, well, is that going to happen to my place if I build it, or if I buy an apartment that's 20 years old? No, it's not going to happen, because all around us there are places that have been built for 20 or 30 years, and the great majority of them have gone through hundreds of earthquakes in the last 50 years. They range from 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, stuff like that. And they are still there. Even in large quakes they've gone through, like the 2010 quake, it's an 8.8 down south of here, a few hours south of the epicenter. And it was very strong up here in this part of central Chile, Viña del Mar, Valparaiso, and Santiago. And there was great damage, but they didn't have to demolish buildings, in great measure. There were some that had to come down, perhaps, in some newer structures, but it was certainly the rare exception to the rule. So you don't have to worry much about buying structures here and being killed by the structures if they're new, or having things go, completely fall apart. Chile has very, very strict building codes. It's not because of the codes, it's just because people in their own market-oriented response are concerned that they're going to live in an earthquake-prone country, and they want to make sure that they survive any kinds of quakes. So rest assured, this is a great example of Chilean ingenuity, architecture, engineering, and that this country is here to stay. We are not Haiti or even New Zealand, which has a 6.4, hundreds of times less powerful, and goes to pieces, literally destroys the whole town. And here we got a quake, much stronger, and it doesn't do the same. In Iquique, of course, there was also the 7.6 aftershock, and that by any stretch of the imagination, just by any standard, I guess, around the world, would be a big earthquake in and of itself. 7.6 is not small, and they had that just right after, shortly after the main quake of 8.2. And that rattled some cages, caused some more damage. In fact, that was pretty damaging to property as well, but no deaths. The tidal wave, or the tide that came in, wasn't a big wave, even up close to the epicenter. It did damage a lot of boats and some small fishing villages. I mentioned this last week on the radio. And some places in Arica were damaged. But again, it's all things that can be repaired and moved on rather quickly. There have been all fuel supply is normal now. All distribution is completely normal. The airports were never shut down. There are some roads which are completely destroyed. Big cracks, actually separated, so you have one level was up here, and all of a sudden it's a meter less, and a crack might be a meter wide. It just destroyed roads. But okay, so that's bad. But you got to get construction crews out there, redo the road, and put it down again, and that'll be probably fixed in a couple months, or 3 months, or 6 months. I don't know. Relatively fast, especially if it's private. If it's run by the state, as the state usually does things very poorly, it might be a much longer time, but at some point it will be done. Water this availability has been restored in Iquique and Arica now, way over 95%. There might be some isolated places in parts of like Alto Hospicio, the lower part above Iquique, but nearly everybody has water. Electricity is only 80% restored in the Arica province. There are some places that still do not have electricity, and some places in Iquique that are still suffering. They're having to work to get that done as they've got some stuff to repair. But we're only talking about a week. I mean, how many places in the world after a week or a few days would be this sophisticated to have everything operated, running as normal, whether it be supermarkets and shopping, schools, university studies, anything like that normal daily life is back to normal for most people. There are some that are still suffering, but by and large, it's been really quickly gotten over, and it's just a great testament again to Chilean resilience, if we might say. All right, well, perhaps that's enough about the earthquake. Joe, what do you have to say? Have you been thinking about earthquakes? Have any comments about earthquakes, yes or no?
Not really. It's, you know, you have something everywhere. Here it's earthquakes, and the tornado alley is tornado alley. If you're on the Gulf, it's hurricanes. It's not a concern here. It just, and you see all these old buildings here, and it's amazing. You don't even see stress cracks in them. They look fine. They look like they're new, except for just the age of colors fading and that type of thing.
Well, it happens to the best of us. I like to think I'm eternally young, but it just doesn't happen. I get wrinkly and fat as I get older. What can I say? It just doesn't work out though. But anyway, that's the nature of things, isn't it? Well, anyway, yes, earthquake-prone Chile is well protected, so it's been in the news, but it didn't stay in the news long because there's not a whole lot to report when you can't get all excited about hundreds of thousands of people dead in Indonesia or Haiti or something like that. Chile is just a more advanced country. I'm proud to live here. I'm glad that I'm a citizen. I'm glad people will take such good care of things like buildings, so I don't have to worry all the time when I see an earthquake happening. There are some people burning barricades in Iquique, though, to protest the lack of help coming in. They want the government to do more in some poorer sections. The way they do that is protest. They throw tires out there, light them on fire. It makes a lot of black smoke, especially at places it doesn't rain. It's kind of nasty. It's unfortunate, but I understand their concerns, and especially if they're trying to rely on the government. This should be a lesson for people out there about libertarianism. Relying on the state doesn't give you a whole lot of hope. The state only brings more problems than it actually solves in general. There might be a few people that benefit from the state, but by and large, state help means state failure and more problems down the road. And we want to bring that message as much as we can here to Chile. You are listening to Red Hot Chile. This is Dr. John Coben on the Overseas Radio Network, and we'll be back right after this break.